Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to an emergency live stream of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Before we get into it, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. And I'm here with Big Blue Views Chris Pflum, and we are here at 7:30 on a Tuesday night because your New York Giants are signing Russell Wilson, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos, and Seattle Seahawks, to be their quarterback one for the 2025 season. It's a one-year deal, $10.5 million. I think $21 million it could escalate to. Chris, thanks for hopping on, and I need you to share with folks as you've been doing these, all of your profiles and your deep dives on quarterbacks. I need you to share with me your absolute instant reaction the second you heard it. What did you send me in Slack?
Okay. Yeah. If the Giants punt on a quarterback again, I am not doing any more deep dives. Fool me 3 times, you can't fool me again.
Nope. You did how many deep dives on quarterbacks last year?
Oh, 6. 6, yes.
And you're in the process of doing, I think, 5 this year.
5 more. And that's on top of the 5 or 6 I did way the hell back in the before times of 2018.
And of course, I think one of those deep dives lands tomorrow morning.
It does. Tyler Shuck,
yes,
quarterback Louisville, where Joe Shane was today.
We will dive into that a whole lot more. But, other than, oh man, I did all this work. I'm in the process of doing all this work. That'll teach you to do all this work. Your instant thought, your first thought on the signing of Russ to be the Giants quarterback for 2025.
My first thought is it fits. Let Russ cook. Yeah, Russell Wilson has always been the type of quarterback I thought would go very well with the Giants, and particularly since Brian Daboll has been their head coach. Just the mobility in the backfield combined with the willingness to test a defense deep. Just let him throw the deep ball, and if he has to buy time, he can buy time. If he has to pick up yards on his own, he is willing to. But like the chemistry he had last year after just, not even 1 year with George Pickens, let him do that with Malik Neighbors, with Darius Slayton. Like it fits. That's also why I liked signing Jameis Winston, because that fit as well. That's the thing we've talked a lot about, behind the scenes, is just this team wants to attack deep to free up things underneath for Wan'Dale Robinson, for Tyrone Tracy. And from that perspective, with these two guys, I like the signing of Russell Wilson, and I like the contract. Like that is, for him, that is not a big deal. That's not onerous.
I wanted to get into the contract because I have to be honest, that's what I like most about this.
Yes.
When you use the various simulators, or you go to Spot Track and they have their market value calculator and all of that, and Pro Football Focus had one as well, they're talking about a 2-year deal for Russell Wilson in the neighborhood of $75 to $77 million. We're talking about $38 million a year for Russell Wilson. And what the Giants just got him for was far less than even the 20 to 30 million that I had seen estimated the other day. They got him for 1 year, $10.5 million guaranteed. And, obviously there's incentives, escalators that'll drive it up to 21. But let's be real, the Giants would be happy to pay those incentives.
Absolutely.
Because those incentives, the way that Joe Shane usually does those things, they would be playoff based. There would be some individual performance incentives in there, but a lot of that would be tied to the Giants making the playoffs. So This is a fantastic contract. And look, Russell Wilson is not the guy who was, an annual Pro Bowler 7, 8, 10 years ago, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's not that guy. But he's still the best quarterback that the Giants have had since Eli Manning. And that's for me, that's the frame that you have to put this in. So anyhow,
absolutely. And I would go so far as to say Russell Wilson, even what he was this year, even seeing him down the last 4-5 games with Pittsburgh when he wasn't what he was when he beat the Giants this year. Yeah, it's still probably the best quarterback the Giants have had since Eli in 2015. Maybe not 2014, but certainly 2015. And I have to say, going back, Russell Wilson was the first player I studied when I attended the scouting academy a few years ago. And I've always had a soft spot for him. And the way he processed the game, the way he threw the ball, just everything about his game, I do have a soft spot for. So I'm excited to see what this does. Now, I don't think this is a long-term answer for the Giants at all. I don't think this should stop them from drafting a quarterback, but it could save Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's jobs.
Absolutely. And I think the frame that I've tried to put the entire offseason in became crystal clear for me when I was at the Combine talking to Joe. The obviously John Mara decided to bring, Joe and Brian Daboll back, and he actually sounded kind of lukewarm even when he did it. But he decided to bring them back. He put pressure on them. He basically said you've got a 1 year lease to make this better. And Joe understands the assignment. When we talked to him in both a public and a private session in Indianapolis, he talked about 2025 over and over and over and over. And 2026 and beyond barely came up. So he understands the assignment. And that's why both Jameis Winston and now Russell Wilson are in Giants uniforms. Hang on a second. We have another interloper who wants to jump in. Nick Falato.
By God!
You want a piece of this?
By God, it's Nick Falato with a steel chair.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Chris, Ed, thank you for having me. So we got 2 quarterbacks now in the span of a week. How are we feeling about it, boys?
2 more than we had.
2 more than we had, yes, indeed.
I don't know.
And
I could have suited up. It would have been fine.
No, Chris and I were just discussing the fact that that Joe Schoen absolutely understood the assignment this offseason, which was he has to do what he has to do for 2025. He eventually, I still think the Giants will draft a quarterback here, but he had to do what he had to do to put the best product on the field that he possibly could in 2025, and I think the Giants have done that.
I agree. If you weren't going to land Aaron Rodgers, getting Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson into your building, look, everyone knows the New York Giants are desperate when they kept Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. People are like, oh, this is a desperation move. It's like, yeah, have you been paying attention to the New York Giants recently? Of course it's a desperation move, but you still want to have a competent product out there. And there's no arguing that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, Russell getting this starter type of money, is far more competent than anything the New York Giants had during the 2024 season. And that's going to allow Malik Neighbors to flourish. Hopefully Jalen Hyatt, if he can find the damn football field, Darius Slayton, Wandale Robinson. This is an upgrade. I don't have delusions of grandeur, but I am much more interested, at least, in the New York Giants right now after these two quarterback signings. And I agree with you, Ed. I do not think the Giants are done. Would not be surprised if the number 3 overall pick is spent on a quarterback as well.
Jalen Hyatt, I mean, come on, Nick. There's no playing time for him. You've got little Jordan Humphrey now. Yeah, there's no playing time for Hyatt.
That 11 personnel package with little Jordan Humphrey is going to be rolled out there, and he's going to block his ass off, and I'm going to fall in love with him, even though he's probably going to have like 10 catches this season if he even makes the team.
Block his ass off for Tyrone Tracy.
I do love the fact that, when Daniel Jones was a rookie, Daniel Jones, one of the things he did best under Pat Shurmur was throw the deep ball. Then Joe Judge basically beat out of him any willingness to take any risk whatsoever. And the deep element really just hasn't been there for the Giants ever since. And we know Brian Daboll wants that. We know that maybe Russell Wilson is not what he used to be, but Russell Wilson still throws a very pretty moon ball.
He does.
And that element, whether it's Winston or whether it's Wilson, playing, and it'll be Russ if he's healthy, of course, that element is now absolutely part of the Giants' offense.
And they have missed that terribly. Like, the best the Giants' offense has looked, when it has looked, like, you can see the vision that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka have for this offense. The second half of the Cardinals game in 2023, and then the Indianapolis Colts this past year, the game that cost them Cam Ward. Like, you could see the effect that the deep ball has on the rest of this offense. How springing Darius Slayton and Malik Neighbors deep, what that does for Wandale Robinson, what it does for the tight ends. I still believe in Daniel Bellinger. He is not that much less athletic than oh, crap. Sorry, brain fart. I'm old.
Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson. Thank you. Ed, who is actually older than me. And
thanks for the remander, Chris.
You didn't want to call him old there, though, Chris. You didn't want to say that, so you just said
no. I
didn't.
Me.
The comparative adjective saved you there.
Listen,
be nice, boys. Be nice.
I was finishing up dinner when Ed messaged me, but let's do this.
It's just. I think we also have to reference the fact. I think today's a good day. First of all, it's a good day because Russell Wilson is not Aaron Rodgers, and just doesn't come. I mean, he's not a saint, but he doesn't come with the drama and the baggage that Rodgers brings to the table. Yes. But Russell Wilson is not the Russell Wilson of 2016, 2017 either.
He is not.
So this is not, you said it at the top of the show, Chris, this is not a 5-year answer for the Giants. No. It's a we need to put a good football team on the field in 2025 answer, and it gives them a chance to do that. Both of you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I just came up with a video on Jameis Winston and how he adds this vertical element to the offense that the Giants really have not seen since Eli Manning was in the building. Yes. Russell Wilson,
look who's joining the party now. It's Tony DelGenio. Look at this. We have the whole crew. How are you, Tony?
Hi. So
hey, Tony, how you doing?
I was out to dinner tonight. So the Giants trade up to number 1 while I was out.
Well, not quite, but they did sign an old guy like you and me to play some quarterback. So
an old guy.
Last time we did this, I was explaining why Bo Nix was worth the top half of the first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, Russell Wilson, of course.
That's right. He was absolutely right.
So what's your thought on Russell Wilson, Tony?
Did they sign him?
Yes, they did. That's why you're
okay.
here.
Oh, all right. I'm just hearing about it. I've been out.
Well, see, we brought you on the show, and Russell Wilson is the quarterback. And look, we're breaking news for Tony. How about that?
Okay. Well, this is great. So, I mean, it sure makes it interesting. I guess the first thing that crossed my mind as you revealed that news to me is, okay, now they're kind of guaranteed to get either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter with the number 3 pick.
Absolutely.
And I mean, unless there's somebody else they like even better, but I guess my reaction to the whole set of things that's been going on with regard to what's going to happen at the top of the draft is that, and again, I'm not the expert. The other 2 guys here, can give a more definitive assessment than me. But my impression of Shedeur Sanders is that, he's a good quarterback, and if he became the Giants' quarterback, forgetting about the off the field stuff with Dion and everything, right? But just from a pure football standpoint, I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I just say to myself, is he someone worth picking at number 3 in the draft? And I haven't been able to kind of get past that issue in my own mind. And so, yet last year they had the chance to grab one of those quarterbacks, whether it was Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, and they chose to go Malik Neighbors instead. And here we are a year later, and they're still trying to figure out what they're doing with the quarterback position when they could have had one of those guys. Yet the guy they picked is arguably, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say the best player in the draft, but he sure as hell is one of the best players in the draft after one season. And we all complain about, now don't draft for need, draft the best player available. And the Giants kind of did that last year. And I don't know too many Giants fans who are unhappy with Malik Neighbors. And so I said, well, with number 3 this year, there just seemed to me to be 2 guys after Cam Ward who really stand out as being elite players that you'd be perfectly content to take at number 3. And do you want to take Shedeur Sanders, who seems more like a middle of the first round, bottom of the first round level quarterback than him? So anyway, getting Russell Wilson was actually the guy that I was sort of advocating, not sort of, I did advocate in a post I wrote or so
Absolutely.
ago that they take. And
Tony's crystal ball.
Yeah. And so I really, I'd heard that they may not be done yet, and they might do it. So in that sense, I guess it's not a big surprise. You'd like to know whether they had that discussion with Jameis Winston before Jameis Winston decided to sign on the dotted line, because I've been actually, thinking about the possibility of Jameis Winston being a better quarterback than what he's shown in most of his seasons so far. But anyway, bottom line is now they don't have to draft a quarterback unless they want to take one in the 2nd or 3rd round, one of the developmental types.
Guys, before we get into talking more about the 3rd overall pick and some of those other quarterbacks, we are live. And I did want to mention that we did have a question from Michael Garcia in the chat that I thought I would address. And he asks, why didn't they do this a week ago? And why did they sign Jameis Winston? And my reaction to that, Michael, is this. This is the NFL. This is a negotiation. This involves millions of dollars. The Giants signed Jameis Winston because a week ago they didn't know for certain if they were going to be able to get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. They got a guy who can play if they need him to play. They got him at a 2-year, $8 million price tag. That's backup quarterback money. And let's be brutally honest. The other thing that signing Jameis Winston did was put pressure on Russell Wilson to sign a contract and probably drive his price tag down, because Russell Wilson just signed for less than a third of the projected value that most people thought he was going to get at the beginning of the offseason. There were projections from Pro Football Focus and from Spot Track of him getting 2 years, $75 to $77 million. And he just signed for 1 and 10. So the Winston signing, to me, was to protect the Giants and to put some pressure on Russell Wilson to make a decision. Guys, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that as well.
Absolutely. At the time, he was trying to decide or being courted by the Steelers, the Giants, the Browns. Yeah, the Giants could not allow themselves to go into the draft with Tommy DeVito as their QB1. Like, that was like,
no, not happening.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, DeVito maniacs, not happening.
They needed somebody who could start a game with the realistic expectation that they could win the game without the defense coming away with 3 turnovers. So Winston made sense. And by all accounts, he's a great locker room guy. And like Ed and I were talking about at the top of the show, Winston can throw the deep ball. He can unlock the offense that we have only seen in flashes and glimpses. 1 or 2 series a game, maybe 1 game a year. So from that perspective, Winston made sense at the time with Russell Wilson being courted by 2 other teams. And now the Giants have 2 guys who can do what they need to do, on game day, week 1. Now, I think Tony, the Giants do need a quarterback of the future. And I do think that really should come from this draft. I think they kind of sort of have learned their lesson. I at least hope they have learned their lesson that you never know what happens in the next draft. Some guy might come out of nowhere and be amazing. You might get a LeGarrette Sellers out of South Carolina who becomes the next Jaden Daniels. Or Arch Manning could declare and be great, but you might not have the chance to draft him, or nobody might come out. So, I do think quarterback is still in play, and I do think relatively highly, even into the first round.
I would say this, though, having signed 2 guys, and as I said earlier, the fact that Joe has repeatedly said, Joe Shane has repeatedly talked about 2025. I can't see Shadur Sanders being the pick at number 3, not after the Winston signing. You guys agree with that? I mean, if they love the guy, I could see it, but I think the play at this point with just having signed a 37-year-old quarterback, the play is to get the best player on the board.
Yeah, Tony touched on that at the top of when he came in, and he's just spot on there. Look, this move gives the Giants the flexibility to do what they want in the draft. It removes the burden of being forced to take a quarterback that you might like, but you're really just talking yourself into selecting him, because now they have that safety net of having Jameis as a backup with Russell Wilson as the starter. And we know that there are 3 blue chip, if you want to count Cam Ward in that conversation, but Cam Ward is likely to go first overall. So now you have 2 blue chips and the Giants are picking 3rd. So the Giants are going to either get Hunter and you get a wide receiver cornerback, which is amazing, or you get Abdul Carter to pair with your edge room with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Golston as well. So it's a good situation from that standpoint. And it also offers you, if you wanted to trade down, if you wanted to do that. Like, it just gives the Giants more flexibility, and that's what they need at this moment, because they have a lot of holes and a lot of things that could be plugged up.
So, Nick, before you cede the floor, the Giants may not have a choice between Carter and Hunter.
They might.
But if they do have a choice between Carter and Hunter, and I'm going to ask Tony and I'm going to ask Chris the same question, if they do have a choice, pick your guy and make your case.
Travis Hunter. I mean, I've been saying this since the season. I absolutely love this kid's game. I think he would play cornerback, but there would be a package of like 20 to 25 plays, third down, red zone with him on offense. Him and Malik Neighbors, I'm not 100% certain how defenses are going to scheme against that, and he'll be starting possibly. Again, you would have to maneuver it with Adebo and Banks and what you're going to do. But I think this is, look, I don't like using those transcendent words and things like that, but like he's as close to it as you get. And when you consider the processing that he has, the maturity that he has, and how everyone raves about his leadership, I just think that is exactly what the New York Giants need in this locker room. So I'm personally going with Hunter as much as I do respect Abdul Carter's game.
Tony?
Okay, I'm going to lean on Chris's writing a little bit.
Oh boy!
So first of all, I agree with Nick. Okay, is the bottom line. My conclusion. I agree with Nick, and but a couple of things I think. First of all, going back to the developmental quarterback thing. Chris has written recently. About. Is it Tyler Shuck?
Yep, that's dropping tomorrow.
From Louisville.
Nice.
And I'm not sure what round you have to take him in order for him still to be there, but you could imagine, maybe him being there in round 3 or something like that at the end or whatever. I don't know. That's exactly the type of guy who maybe needs more development that you could bring in and see what he can turn into. But then, as far as the other part goes, it's just, well, I think about, it's so hard for me to decide between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. But going back to something else that Chris has said, he loves Josiah Stewart and one of his players. And that's a guy who's, I think, not going to go in the first round, maybe not even go in the second round. I don't know, but if you could find another edge guy, like that later on, that frees you up. And Travis Hunter is, he's unique, right? He's a throwback, almost to the Frank Gifford era. I think in terms of versatility. To have somebody who can be that good at two positions. I think. First of all, I think cornerback. My sense is that cornerback is his best position. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think he could step in and be CB2, if not CB1. I don't want to downgrade him. And then you don't have any pressure at all to make Tay Banks a starting cornerback on your team if Hunter is there, and Tay Banks can just develop to the extent he can develop, and if he's good enough to win starting CB2 job, great. If not, you've got another guy who can do that. Plus, you get to put him in as a wide receiver with Malik Neighbors in certain packages, and so, man, I can just think of a ton of things you can do with that player.
You know what? For my part, I am actually going to take door number 3 on the two of them, and I would auction either of those two guys off to whoever wants them. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I'm actually kind of sort of targeting the Jacksonville Jaguars because they have 2 third-round picks. I would gladly take those 2 third-round picks. I do think there are actually, realistically, 4 blue-chip players, but actually 5. Okay. Cam Ward, Carter and Hunter, Mason Graham, but also Ashton Jeanty, which, that dude is...
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I would honestly say he's a better running back than Saquon. And I do not feel that is a controversial take. Saquon might be a better athlete, but just, man, it for the folks watching this, if you haven't watched Ashton Jeanty's tape, he plays at a different speed, and he just looks at guys tackling him and says, no, you are not tackling me. I'm going to pick up 10 yards. That's all that's just the way reality is right now.
For that dude is Chris, you know this, man. Missed tackles force is a stat that Pro Football Focus accumulates. And Ashton Jeanty had 157 missed tackles force, 100 missed tackles force. I think there's only been 4 running backs in the history since 2016 or 2015 since they've been tabulating this that have broken 100. It's like Bijan Robinson, Cam Scadaboo this year. I think David Montgomery had 99 when he came out, and this dude has 157. Yeah. So it's insane when you think about it.
There is also, Chris, I just want to say this. There is also this, all right? This is a nice topic. Ashton Genty is a nice topic, and we can talk about how good he is or he isn't. But the reality of the situation is there is zero chance that Joe Schoen would ever draft Ashton Genty.
No.
Not after not after the Saquon Barkley stuff, and not after years of him pounding the table and basically in a backhanded way when we've talked to him being critical of teams that draft running backs in the first round. There is zero chance of Joe Schoen ever doing that. So wonderful player, will not be a New York Giant.
Oh, no. I would not even advocate the Giants draft him in the first round. If I'm being perfectly honest, I do not believe you should draft a running back in the first round. It's just too easy to get a good running back and get if you can get 80% of the production of a fifth round running back of a first round running back for a fifth round running back, it does not make sense. But that doesn't change the fact that Ashton Genty is an amazing player. I mean, he had more yards after contact than the next closest guy had, period. Like, he is just insane. But to backtrack a little bit for why I think trading down actually really should be within reason for the Giants. You've got Hunter, you've got Carter, you've got Mason Graham, you've got Cam Ward, but then still you've got Amar Membo out of Mizzou, the offensive tackle. Like, he could bookend Andrew Thomas immediately. And if you get those 2 third-round picks from the Jaguars trading down to 5th, who I'm sure they would love to get Travis Hunter, to get a potentially elite weapon for Trevor Lawrence. And also, they could probably use a CB1. The Giants have Paulson Debo. They've got Tay Banks, who, he does not give up a hell of a lot of separation. He just needs to get better at the catch point. And this is a thing I messaged Ed about. You go on RAS.football, Tay Banks is the most athletic cornerback in NFL history. Like, he has the 10.0. Like, if the Giants can coach that up and unlock that, I'm willing to give him that third year to prove it. So you move back, you get those 2 third-round picks. Tony talked about Josiah Stewart. As far as talent goes, I have a 1-2 grade on him. It's just his traits are not quite first round. He's a little short, slightly short arms, but as far as, burst, skill, violence, like that dude has it all. He reminds me of Melvin Ingram. And as far as cornerbacks go, there are a ton of really good cornerbacks in this class. Like, I don't know that Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter are that far ahead of the rest of the pack that the Giants can't get other good guys at positions that are already stacked for them.
Yeah, it's such an interesting debate. I do like the trade down idea. Before we get completely off of number 3, I wanted to sort of take the opposite view from Nick on using Travis Hunter. And what I would say is, if you draft Travis Hunter, if you're the Giants, before the signing of Paulson Adebo, I would have said, absolutely, Travis Hunter is a full-time corner and a part-time wide receiver. But as Chris has been talking about, Tay Banks had some attitude issues last year. He had a couple of run-ins with Jerome Henderson and all of that. But Tay Banks is still a first-round pick. Tay Banks has every athletic trait that you would ever want. He's still a guy that Joe Schoen traded up for. I don't think Joe Schoen is going to be happy about Tay Banks being turned into cornerback 4. I don't think he's going to be happy about that at all. I mean, unless you're talking about trading Tay Banks and clearing a spot for Travis Hunter, which I don't see happening either. I was actually asked this in a mailbag, and I put some thought into it this week. As the Giants are currently constructed, I think you could probably find, 50, 60 snaps a game on offense for Travis Hunter in a vertical, big play, downfield passing offense, and 15 to 20 snaps on defense, which, Nick and Chris, you guys would know this better than I would, but an offensive playbook is much more complicated, much bigger, much harder to learn than a defensive playbook where, look, man-to-man coverage is man-to-man coverage for a corner. Cover 3 is cover 3. Quarters is quarters. It is what it is, and you just tell the guy we're in quarters on this play, or we're in man, or we're in whatever, and he knows what that is because he's played it before. I think you put Travis Hunter on the field when it's passing downs, when it's 4 wide receivers, 5 wide receivers, and I think with the Giants, maybe offense, the way the Giants are structured right now, is where he could have the biggest impact. The Giants haven't actually added anything on offense other than Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston now.
I'll say this. I think being in those defensive meeting rooms are very important. And rapport between a quarterback and a wide receiver, obviously that's very important. But I also think rapport between a defensive cornerback and the safeties with the different coverages and being in those meeting rooms, I think that's where he would need to be if he's going to be a full-time cornerback. You're right, though. This offensive playbook, especially with Brian Daboll, is complex. I think this kid, from everything I've heard, I don't really know, right? But from everything I've heard, he's very intelligent, and he could learn where he has to be on certain plays within the packages of on the offense, within certain packages on offense. Whereas on defense, I don't know if they'd want to just be, hey, we're going to throw you out there for 15 plays, and it's 15 plays where he wasn't really in the meeting rooms because he's with the wide receivers. I don't know if that would work out, but overall, my assessment of the situation is you can tackle this when that problem, I wouldn't even call it that, when that situation arises, and you can put him where he needs to go. And if Tay Banks is a malcontent, if Tay Banks does not take the step that he needs to, you have him sitting right there. You start putting him in that defensive meeting rooms, Hunter, and then you have that problem solved like this. And I always think if you do that, you always have in your back pocket, it's third down. Hunter, go in there. We're going to run the play. You got to be here. And you have that skill set and that talent out there with Malik Neighbors.
It's a good problem to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that.
Go ahead, Chris.
With Travis Hunter, and when Nick and I get into the draft stuff and talk about the big board, I'm sure we'll probably wind up doing a show for the big board, something like that. But the thing I worry about with Travis Hunter, and this is with every player, is the fatigue, the exposure to injury. You talk about playing 17 games, 140 snaps of NFL football. That is a lot. Travis Hunter is not playing. I don't care how different he thinks he is built. He ain't built that different. He is not doing all of that. He is not going through practice at 2 different positions on both sides of the ball. He is not playing 100 snaps. That's saying taking 10, 15, 20 snaps off per side per game. He's not doing that. He will wear down by the bye week. He will get hurt. I mean, this past year, he had a shoulder injury, and that's in college, playing 12 games. That I don't think is realistic. I think the team that drafts him has to have a plan in place for which side of the ball they want him to play, and then a package of plays on the other side. And I would only plan on 10 plays a game. And to me, it's easier to fit 10 plays in on offense than 10 plays in on defense. And defense, the offensive playbook is definitely bigger, especially with the Giants, with Brian Daboll. It is more intricate. but you still have to be in the defensive meeting rooms for things like coverage rotations, mod and meg pattern matching, the blitz packages, all of that. Like it's not super simple in the back end. So yeah, I do think that if the Giants were to draft Travis Hunter, maybe they do start him out on offense and play him with Malik Neighbors as wide receiver 2, or whatever. Maybe he's wide receiver 3-ish, and Wan'Dale Robinson is a gadget guy, and Jalen Hyatt goes, I don't know, to the nether realms or whatever. But there has to be a plan in place for him. I don't think he can get his wish and be a 120 snap a game player, because he won't last. He just won't.
Well, guys, what I want to do, let's talk about, I think we're pretty much in agreement that the number 3 pick is probably not going to be Shedeur Sanders, but also that Joe Shane has never drafted a quarterback. He said the other day, he said, he said, I'm a believer in taking swings at the quarterback position, but he's never really taken one until this offseason now when he has to. So let's say it's not Shedeur at 3. I'm going to go around the room here. We're looking at Jackson Dart. We're looking at Tyler Shuck. We're looking at Jaylen Milroe. And, if you want to put Will Howard or Kyle McCord or whoever in that conversation, that's up to you. But when you look at that quote-unquote second-tier quarterback, who's your guy? Who's your favorite? Tony, who's the guy for you that, whether the Giants have to move around the board or whether they just take one at 34 or 65 or whatever, who's the guy for you that would be your favorite target out of that group?
So with these 2 quarterbacks that they've signed, I feel like there's absolutely then no rush on a developmental quarterback. And so if you make, so I think I'd be happy if they want to do Tyler Shuck. The other guy I might take a chance on is Jaylen Milroe, who I think needs a lot of work and may never get there, but the traits are so compelling that
4.37 is 4.37.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's just he's just not an NFL quarterback yet, right? I mean he's not Anthony Richardson, but I think he has a lot of developing to do, which may happen, may not happen. But if you're not taking him day one, then you can kind of live with that. And I've been less enamored with Jackson Dart when I watch him. I've only watched him a couple of times. He plays in a very simplified offense, and a couple of times I watched him, I came away from him just saying, "What's all the excitement about?" And it's not a very high level analysis of him or anything like that. And maybe he'll become something great, but I look at him and I see someone who's more likely to become a mediocre quarterback than a great quarterback in this league. I look at Jaylen Milroe and I see somebody who might become a great quarterback and might just drop out of the league entirely or something like that over time. And so with 2 quarterbacks in place already, I'd probably take my chance on Milroe, but I'd be intrigued by a guy like Shuck if you're not giving up too much in draft capital or using too much in draft capital, I should say, to draft him.
Nick?
For me, look, I have to do all 22 deep dives on these guys. I've only really done deep dives on the top 2, and I'm in the middle of Jackson Dart. I'm only 1 game in. But if you're putting a gun to my head metaphorically, Jaylen Milroe, I would say for a later pick, Will Howard. And Jackson Dart, I'm not ruling out quite yet. It really would depend on where it like how expensive he is, but I'm again only one game in, and then I just love the traits of everything I've seen from Shook. So not to be redundant of what Tony said, but that's I lean in this very similar direction with a guy like Milroe too. I just think there's a floor there because he is 6'3", 230 pounds and runs a 4.37. So you can use him in a lot of different ways, and I don't know how inaccurate he actually was. I got to get my eyes on that Alabama all 22.
Yeah, so for me, like a few hours ago, I would have said Jackson Dart just because I'm a couple years in. I've watched his 22 tape. I'm in his 2023 tape right now, and you can see the progression in him as a passer, as a processor, how Lane Kiffin has actually kind of been building the offense around him. And, Nick knows Lane Kiffin's kind of a psycho.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Get him and his Triscuits. Yeah. But yeah, I think with Russell Wilson here, with quarterback not exactly a pressing need for the Giants, I think I would look at that top of the second round, and I would look at Tyler Shough or Jaylen Milroe. Yeah, I've done the deep dives on both of them. I think there is more ability there than Jaylen Milroe showed at the end of 2024. I'm not sure how well the DeBeer offense fit him, that kind of Pac-12 spread coast, whatever offense. He actually, to me, looked more comfortable in a full field read offense in 2023. And also, 6'2", 225, 230, runs a 4.37. He's got an arm like any one of those AFC cyborg quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. In my deep dive, I compared him directly to Josh Allen, and I kind of stand by that. I see a lot of the same issues with Josh Allen at Wyoming as I do Jaylen Milroe at Alabama. And I think there is a similar upside. And I hate hanging that on a rookie quarterback, or not even a rookie, a prospect. But Milroe's, I could see the Giants falling in love with Jaylen Milroe. I really could. And I said that months ago. Ed knows. Between military family, everybody raves about him as a leader, as a worker. He's got the big arm. He can unlock that vertical aspect, and he can be that big body runner that Brian Daboll has always loved in his offenses. So I really could see that. Tyler Shough, folks will read about what I think about him tomorrow, but I like him. If he was 22, he would be quarterback 2. No questions.
Absolutely. Chris, I think it's interesting because you and I have had the Milroe discussion.
We have
many, many, many times over the last couple of months. And honestly, where I have always stood on Jaylen Milroe is I get the potential. I get the ceiling. But you're looking at Brian Daboll needing to win games in 2025. And I have always thought that you can't draft Jaylen Milroe if you're the Giants, because at some point that rookie quarterback that you draft is going to have to see the field in 2025, and he's going to have to look like he has a clue. Well, guess what?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Not with Russell Wilson, not with Jameis Winston, because now you've got 2 veteran quarterbacks who have played a lot of football, who can carry you through 2025. The thing that still is scary to me about drafting Jaylen Milroe is the fact that if 2025 doesn't go well for the New York Giants, Brian Daboll's getting fired.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're putting Jaylen Milroe in that quarterback spin cycle where he might have a new head coach, he'll have a new offensive coordinator, he might have a new GM, he might have an organization that doesn't want him anymore. So That's a tough one for me. For me, the safe choice is Tyler Shuck because I think Tyler Shuck is an NFL quarterback, and as Chris said, I think when I look at Tyler Shuck, and I can't watch film the way that you can, Chris, and the way that you can, Nick. But when I look at Tyler Shuck, ability wise, take everything else away, and just watch the film. And ability wise, he's quarterback 2 for me. You have to factor in his age, you have to factor in his injury history, but pure ability wise, he's quarterback 2. That's how I see it anyway. Anyway, guys, anybody have any last comments on Russell Wilson as New York Giants quarterback 1 in 2025 before we wrap it up?
I actually do. And I'll say this is one thing I have noticed about Joe Schoen for all of the other criticisms of him is that when there is an obvious problem with the roster, this dude attacks that problem.
Yes,
he devotes multiple assets to fixing that problem. The offensive line was a problem in 2022. And he went out, he drafted Evan Neal. He drafted Joshua Zudu. He drafted Marcus McKethan. Now, those didn't really hit. Evan Neal might have a chance at right tackle. I think other than that one play where I didn't, against Micah Parsons, where Parsons used that inside move, and he would have beat Joe Thomas with that move. But anyway, and then you look at what Shane did this past year with the free agent additions at the offensive line. And then you look at what he has done in the secondary with Cordell Flott and Drew Phillips and all of the other guys he's brought in down the draft board, and Michael Penix and Dane Belton. Like, he attacks problems.
Yeah. And
not all of them hit, but he just throws so much at any individual problem that, I have a hard time believing the Giants are done at quarterback. I really do.
I'm there with you, man. You think about the run defense after the 2022 season. He signed Ashawn Robinson, Raheem Nunez-Roches, went out and got Bobby Okereke. The tight end room was a problem in 2023. He drafts Theo Johnson, brings in Chris Manhurt, signs Jack Stoll, even though he didn't make the roster. But he definitely, once he identifies a problem, he pours assets into it. I just wish those problems wouldn't manifest as often as they seem to.
Maybe if they quarterback, everybody will be able to play up to their ability, and less of those problems will manifest. With Washington.
Yeah, it will be really interesting because you can tell by the way they structured their offense in free agency, all the things that they did. They are selling ownership on the idea that quarterback play was the biggest problem. And I think we can all go back to last season, and I think we can probably find 5 games that they win with better quarterback play.
Yes.
Yeah. So we will find out if they're going to be right that better quarterback play leads to a better season. Anyway, guys, this was fun. I hadn't planned on having the whole crew, but I sent out SOS messages, and here you all are. So
glad I
appreciate it. And Tony, we are glad that we broke news for you.
Yes.
Tony is usually the one firing messages into the Slack room about such and such just happened. Have we got it yet? So
my wife and I went out to dinner tonight, and I guess I wasn't checking my phone. I was having
that'll teach you.
That'll teach you, Tony.
But it was a double surprise when I heard the $10 million. And I mean that's the other thing about that we didn't really discuss, right? Is that doesn't hamstring them at all financially if he wants to make other moves. Like
do we know the incentive structure?
We'll see that. Probably see that in a couple of days, and unfortunately, I don't have a super secret inside NFL source to give me those contracts. Dan Duggan. Who's your mole, Duggan? Come on, spill it. Let's go. But unfortunately, I don't have that. But we'll see most of the details in a couple days. Anyway, guys, thank you much. I think that's a good place for us to end. So, Giants fans, thank you for hanging in there with us for a while. Hope you enjoyed it, and please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Yeah, that was